Welcome back to Uncorking the Issues, where we pour clarity into Temecula Valley politics. I'm your host, Grapevine. Today's episode is titled 15 Miles, $500,000, the teacher pay gap you didn't see coming. We're going to talk about something that sounds small at first, but gets very big, very fast. Teacher pay, not the headlines, not the talking points, not the we gave a 3% raise press release. We're talking about what actually matters. What does a teacher really earn over a career? And how different is that depending on where they work? Because if you're a teacher choosing between Temecula Valley Unified School District and Murrieta Valley Unified School District, you're not just choosing a school. You might be choosing a lifetime financial trajectory. And the difference? It's not small. Let's set this up. Temecula and Murrieta are about 15 minutes apart. Same region, similar communities, same general student demographics. If anything, these are the most comparable districts you can find. So logically, you'd expect same job, same pay, same long-term outcome. But that's not what happens. Not even close. Year one, a new teacher starts in Temecula around $60,000. In Murrieta, closer to $63,000. $3,000. Not nothing, but not life-changing. At this point, you might think, okay, Murrieta pays a little more, but here's where it gets interesting. Because teacher pay doesn't just depend on where you start. It depends on how your salary grows. And that growth is driven by something most people never see: contract structure, negotiation strategy, and how districts decide to build or not build raises into the system. In Murrieta, raises tend to be smaller, more frequent, and often layered year after year. In Temecula, raises tend to be harder fought, less predictable, and not always built to compound the same way. Now, here's the key. Compounding, that's the entire story, because small differences in yearly raises don't stay small. They stack, they accelerate, and over time, they separate. Let's jump ahead. Year 5. In Temecula, that teacher might be earning around $68,000. In Murrieta, closer to $76,000. Now, we're not talking about $3,000 anymore. We're talking about a noticeable gap. Fast forward again. Year 10, Temecula, roughly $80,000. Murrieta, pushing $97,000. Now we're talking about a $17,000 difference in a single year. Same profession, same region, same level of experience, $17,000. And here's the part most people miss. That's not just 1 year. That higher salary keeps compounding into every future year. So now, let's zoom out. Let's look at the full picture. 20 years, a full teaching career. In Temecula, a teacher might earn roughly $1.6 million to $1.8 million over 20 years. In Murrieta, closer to $2 million to $2.2 million. Let that sink in. That's a difference of $300,000 to $500,000. $500,000 for working 15 minutes down the road. Not because one teacher worked harder, not because one district has radically different students, but because of how the system is structured, how raises are negotiated, and how those raises stack over time. Now, to be fair, there's more to a job than salary. Temecula has a strong academic reputation, high-performing schools, engaged parent communities, and that matters a lot. Some teachers may choose Temecula for stability, culture, perceived working conditions, and accept lower long-term earnings as part of that trade-off. That's a real decision. But it should be an informed one, because here's the truth. This gap doesn't show up in year 1. It doesn't show up clearly in year 3. It sneaks up on you, quietly, year after year, raise after raise, or lack of raise, until one day you look up and realize you're on a completely different financial path than someone doing the same job right down the road. And then there's one more layer, the one that really changes everything. Pensions. In California, teachers are part of CalSTRS, and your pension is based largely on your final salary. So, if you retire making $80,000 in Temecula versus $110,000 in Murrieta, that difference doesn't just affect your last paycheck, it affects your income for the rest of your life. So now that $300,000 to $500,000 gap, it's not the full story. The real gap is bigger, much bigger, which brings us back to the bigger question. Why? Why would two neighboring districts with similar students, similar communities, and similar goals end up on such different pay trajectories? The answer isn't simple, but part of it comes down to strategy. Murrieta has built a system where raises are more predictable, growth is more consistent, and salaries compound over time. Temecula has taken a different approach, more cautious, more controlled, more dependent on negotiation cycles, and that approach has trade-offs, financial ones, long-term ones, and ones that don't always show up in public discussions. Because let's be honest, when districts talk about raises, they talk in percentages, 2%, 3%, maybe 4%. What they don't talk about is what those percentages mean over 20 years, because that's where the real story is. That's where the impact lives. That's where the difference between pretty similar and $500,000 shows up. So, the next time you hear about a contract negotiation, or a raise being approved, or a district saying it's competitive, ask a better question, not what's the raise this year, but what does this look like over 20? Because in the end, that's the number that actually matters. This has been Uncorking the Issues, where we pour clarity into Temecula Valley politics. I'm Grapevine, and sometimes the biggest differences are the ones that take years